Like I've met a lot of people over the last 6 years particularly, and I've met a lot of people who have remained silent when they shouldn't. And I've met a few people who will speak, but they're rare. You know, I've probably met 50 or 100 now, right? And there are these people who, they don't remain silent. My experience has been that everyone who remains silent when they have something to say pays for it. If you speak your mind and you pay the price and you reap the benefits of that, pay the price for that, reap the benefits, other people who've done that notice,
Yes.
and you find them and they find you.
Yeah,
I mean, that's happened
Yes.
as I've risen to notoriety.
Yeah.
And so, and that's also a huge reward.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So
is the opportunity to meet people in different spheres who've done great things, and that's an enormous benefit of the life I live, and I'm sure the life you live is incalculable. A gift of meeting people who've done extraordinary things, and from a bewildering array of backgrounds. You know, I mean, it's like I don't know, among our circle of people who we know and are friends with, I think there's nothing they have in common other than probably a similar desire to say the truth as they see it, to do so in the face of whatever comes their way. And that might be Yeonmi Park, or it might be Jonathan Pajot. It might be,
right.
There's no
commonality of background experience.
And by the way, then that's one of the things I would say, as it were, to encourage people, is that in that case, like, you can do it too.
Yeah, right.
And you know, I one of the reasons I'm sort of rather actually optimistic about the next generation coming along in America and in the Western democracies in general is that I think the smarter ones, and I'm sure you see this all the time, the smarter ones have all seen through the dogma of the day, and they don't like it. And although there are these sorts of prim, censorious, you know, tittle-tattle, telltale people in their 20s and some pathetic people in their 30s and 40s and so on, nevertheless, the people coming up in their teens and early 20s now have seen through those people. They don't like them. They're right not to like them. And so actually...
That's why they look to people like Joe Rogan.
Right. And they're right to look
they
to people
are,
like
they
that.
are.
Because
Yeah.
here's somebody who's very successful, very funny, very smart.
Very tough.
Very tough, lives the life he wants to live. As you know, if you go to Joe's studio, it's pretty much what at the age of about 15 you thought you'd do if you got some cash. And that's pretty great. I mean, you know, and I think that the more that happens, the more people see that there's a way through. The more we'll have this sort of aggregator effect.
Okay, so you can use language two ways. You can either decide what you want from someone before you talk to them, and then you can craft every word that you utter in order to extract that. That's instrumental use of language. I've talked to lots of journalists who do that.
For sure.
Or you can just sit down and you can say what you think and see what happens. And those are very, very, now this is what Rogan does is in his interviews. He just says what he thinks and he sees what happens. Now, the advantage to the former strategy is that in principle, you get what you want. But the disadvantage is, well, you might have to manipulate people and they'll catch on to that. And the second and more profound disadvantage is, what the hell do you know about what you want? You know, it's not like you're transparent to yourself.
Yes.
And so you might have some bloody scheme that you think you're seeing through, and you might manipulate to get it, but that doesn't mean it'll be good for you when you get it. And so you could contrast that instead with a different proposition, which is, and I think this is a correct proposition, and I think it's maybe the fundamental religious proposition, possibly, is that whatever happens if you are acting in accordance with the truth is the best thing that could have possibly happened, regardless of how it seems to you at the time. And so that's, you know, that's a dubious proposition, but here's one that's not so dubious, I think, although I do think it's true. If you have to let go of the consequences of your words because you're just going to let the cards fall wherever they're going to fall, you get to have an adventure. because you don't know what the hell's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so you
Absolutely.
think absolutely. Okay, so
Absolutely,
okay, so
that's the
why do
case.
you think that?
Of course, it's the most exciting thing, because you'll actually be off on an adventure, which is predicated on an idea which I believe to be true, which is that the point of truth is not just a sort of, it's not a game, it's to get you somewhere. You know, I mean, it's like the search for meaning. You either devolve, I think I said this with you and Jonathan before, but you either devolve into the sort of idea that we're meaning-seeking creatures, but there's no meaning, or you say we're meaning-seeking creatures, and there's a reason for that. And the reason is, it's because we're hoping to get somewhere.
To that center
that I talked about. It's like you hope.
That's the same as the center of that
of the maze.
Of the maze.
Exactly.
It's the same
You
thing.
hope that if you you know, it sounds like Václav Havel, but I mean, if you tread in truth, if you follow your instinct towards truth, you're bound to make some missteps, you're bound to get some things wrong, as everybody does, but the orientation of where you're going to is correct. It is correct, and at the end of it, whatever it was you were meant to be in your life is more likely to be what you'll be than if you set off in error and deliberately suppressed what you believed and what you wanted to do in your life.
So here's a corollary to that also, I would say, is that if you say what you think, then it's you saying and you thinking, and that means that whatever happens is your life.
Yes.
But if you engage in falsehood, then I think you're the devil's puppet, fundamentally.
Yes.
And the reason I think that is because if you're engaging in falsehood, then whatever it is that you're saying and thinking, it isn't you, by definition, because it's not what you think.
And you can tease that out of people, rather like Theodore Dalrymple did with those prisoners. You can tease it out with people, which is why people like Joe are so interesting in comedy, because my late friend Clive James had this beautiful saying. He wrote somewhere. He said common sense and humor are the same thing, moving at different speeds. Humor is just common sense dancing. Now, I love this quote, and one of the things that's so suggestive about it is a comedian, or indeed any of us who tell a joke, if it's a good joke, irrespective of whether or not it's offensive to some person, people laugh. And the laughter is the recognition that what has happened is
real.
Real.
You bet.
It's reality dancing. It's reality riffing on itself at a higher speed.
And transcending itself.
Absolutely. And one of the greatest things, why I'm very confident that if you have enough comedians in our society who are good, we might get out of this. Because
those are the 10 good men in Sodom, by the way.
Absolutely right.
Who dare to tell the truth.
Exactly. The fact that at our age might need to rely on comedians will tell us something about our age. But nevertheless, if you make somebody laugh about the thing, they recognize it and they laugh. Quite often, there's a type of person who will then pull back because they've basically admitted that they also recognize this thing to be true, because otherwise they wouldn't have found it funny. They wouldn't have been able to laugh about it, because laughter wouldn't be the response. The response would be disgust.
It's interesting
and quite often they laugh and then they have to feign disgust.
Well, it's interesting too there, and this points to something like an instinct for the truth, because one of the things I was really struck by when I had little kids was how early their sense of humor developed. It's ridiculously early. Like, it's there at 9 months for sure. If you can coax it out of them. But certainly by the time kids are 2, they're doing ridiculously clowny things all the time. And it struck me because it's pre-linguistic even. It's so deep, that sense of humor. And I do think it's part of the orientation towards truth. It's the playful orientation towards truth.
Well, that's why I quoted Martin Amis earlier, but I mean, he famously said once that the reason you should be suspicious of people with no sense of humor isn't just that they don't know what's funny, but they don't know what's serious either. And that is...
well, the funniest comedians are the ones that can take the most serious thing and make it funny.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And which is why...
who dare to do that. The Monty Python troupe was great at that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why everything, so that's why it's also dangerous to be a comedian in this stage, because everyone can take it out of context. With Roseanne Barr the other day, and pretend that you're doing something you weren't. But if in a good faith environment, Yes, these are the people who can point to things we all know to be true. We get to laugh at them and with them. And this reveals something very important in our era, it seems to me, which is the people that you and I spend a certain amount of our lives railing against, and we should get on to some positives, but the railing against is in part because they are censorious bullies. They want to tell you and me and everyone else what we should find funny, what we should read, what we should say, what we should think, how we should act. And in my mind, it's an invitation which I decline. But in that case, these people who are so prim, so unfunny, so tediously repressive in everything they do, don't stand a chance in the long run.
Yeah.
If 10 comedians can take down 1 million social justice activists, and I reckon they can, then I'd bet long on the comedians.